Ladies and gentlemen, panel 2 discussion will start soon, so please take your seat and set your phone on vibration mode. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to day 2 of World Summit of Nobel Peace Laureates. So before we begin our official event today, we have a very special opening performance by Odino Facia. So he is the president of the Voice for Peace Network Foundation, and his performance promotes the culture of peace globally. Let's invite him on stage with a big round of applause.
Good morning, thank you. Well, these songs, the first songs, okay, thank you so much. So very happy to be here. You know, my English is not very good, but these songs have my family, because I think sure more important in the world, in the life, is the family. Okay, in the video is my family. These songs, the words I compose for my dad, for my mom, but for everybody. Okay, thank you. Después de tantos años de tenerte, puedo sentir en ti la libertad. El tiempo es un tirano que no entiende, no, que cuando es de verdad no hay un final. Contigo he aprendido a equivocarme, has soportado toda mi verdad. Con mi silencio sé que puedo hablarte. Cuando más lejos, más cerca tú estás. Y mírame, estoy aquí, sentado a tu lado una vez más. Abrázame, comprenderás que nunca sentirás la soledad. Puedes contar conmigo, sabes que soy tu amigo. Puedes confiar en mí, sabes que estoy aquí. Puedes contar conmigo, sabes que soy tu amigo. Y solo Dios sabrá todo el inmenso amor que guardo para ti. No. Cuando estoy muy lejos y tan solo, puedo sentir que tú estás junto a mí. He perdido tanto al no verte, pero al verte vuelvo a sonreír. Y mírame, estoy aquí, sentado a tu lado una vez más. Abrázame, comprenderás que nunca sentirás la soledad. Puedes contar conmigo, sabes que soy tu amigo. Puedes confiar en mí, sabes que estoy with me. Say, puedes contar conmigo, sabes que soy tu amigo. Y solo Dios sabrá todo el inmenso amor que hoy tengo por Julia de Manisú. ¡Ey! ¡Arriba y va! ¡Everybody up! Nunca nada me alejará de ti. No, say with me. Pues sabes que puedes confiar en mí. Sabes que estoy aquí with me. Puedes sabes que soy tu amigo. Y solo Dios sabrá todo el inmenso amor que guardo. For everybody, I love you. Thank you so much. Na, na. Thank you. Okay, okay. Puedes con... Everybody, ¿sabes qué? Puedes confiar en mí. Sabes que estoy aquí, everybody. Puedes con... Ahí va. ¿Sabes qué? Y solo Dios sabrá todo el inmenso amor que hoy tiene Corea. Thank you so much. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here with us since the morning and performing. I really wanted to sing along, but I could not really speak the language, so. Okay. But it was indeed an amazing performance. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And also, now I would like to introduce the Master of Contents for today, Liv Torres, to announce the agenda for us today and also present us with a video to recap the day yesterday. So let's invite her with a big round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. Morning. As we are seated here, the Nobel Peace Laureates of 2022 are about to leave Oslo, Norway. This is a Nobel Peace Prize this year to civil society, human rights defenders, and to the importance of civil society when it comes to peace building. 3 laureates, one from Ukraine, a civil society organization from Russia, and Ales Bialyatsky from Belarus, where there are thousands of people imprisoned for their fight for democracy and human rights. Ales Bialyatsky is in jail. He's not in Oslo. His wife received the prize for him. But I'd like to read to you the message that he sent to the world on the occasion of the Peace Prize. He says, from jail in Belarus as follows. As I can, I keep peace in my soul. I grow it like a delicate flower. I drive away anger. And I pray that reality does not force me to dig up a long-buried axe and defend the truth with an axe in my hands. Peace, may peace remain in my soul. Ales Bialyatsky. Now, we have fresh snow in Korea today. Where I come from in Norway, snow comes with promises. It promises peace, and it promises new beginnings, good wishes. Now, Alfred Nobel, who left behind the wealth to assure the Nobel Prizes, he said that good wishes alone will not secure peace. Good wishes alone is not enough. It takes hard work. And we started thinking stronger together, that hard work yesterday, with a very powerful opening ceremony, an opening panel focusing with Nobel laureates on the difficult situation in Korea and the costs of war. And Leima powerfully reminded us that North Korea is not first and foremost a threat, it's first and foremost human beings. We are stronger together. We are stronger, united, and peace requires hard work. That was also, of course, the red thread in the youth program that started up yesterday, with some powerful youth asking again and again, what does it take to become a peace builder? And showing again and again the commitment to learn, to build stronger, to build united, build together, and take it forward in peace building. The painting continued yesterday, and I believe all of us are invited to also take part in the painting that will be handed over to the city afterwards. Today, we have a content loaded also. We're going to start with the first panel, focusing on the aftermath of the ongoing war in Korea, focusing on family separations, women, brave women crossing borders, landmine victims, and not the least, how we can rebuild the country into one, or at least secure peace between North and South. We're going to focus on human security, how to assure justice globally, and we're going to have thematic forums focusing on women from victims to leaders and climate change in Korea. We are having yet again the workshops for youth, rebuilding and rebuilding the peace efforts stronger together. The painting continues, as I said, and we will get closer and closer to finding the messages, the content, the substance of what it takes to build peace. Now, President Santos reminded us yesterday of the words of Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela had tried various tools in his life. He had been a boxer, he was a lawyer, and he was a civil rights defender. But he ended his life saying that the most powerful tool was dialogue. That is what we are working on. We are finding the ways forward towards peace together. The most powerful tool is to sit down and talk, as Nelson Mandela said, repeated by Santos yesterday. We will continue that today. And I will end this morning short little speech by introducing the video summarizing the events of yesterday on which we will build on today. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
So before we start the video, I would like to briefly introduce what the panel discussion for today will be about. So as all of you know, the topic for today's panel is open scars of war. So at today's panel, there will be 4 speakers and 1 moderator, of course. And today we will talk about the aftermath of war. And as you know, it is never positive, leaving behind substantial economic, social, environmental, and psychological disorders. 70 years after the armistice agreement, Koreans are still paying for the price of war, and thousands of families have been separated across the DMZ and are never able to meet. Thousands of unmapped landmines are scattered across the DMZ, causing nearly yearly casualties, and thousands of traumatized individuals who have lost their loved ones. So today, what official and/or independent initiatives have been made earlier to ease any of those situations will be on the discussion, and how successful they were, and if so, why and why not. And also, we will also talk about what we can do as a group, and policymakers and civil society's role in doing so, to alleviate the pain or facilitate reconciliation. And also any progress we can have to push on for landmine uncovering or banning any landmines in the future. Any lobbying with the North Korean side to plan another event or family encounters. If political bridges cannot be built at this point in time, can we at least build social or humanitarian bridges? So there are a lot of topics for today, but I hope you can stick until the end. And so now we will play the video, and then I will introduce the panelist and hand over the floor to him.
Today, it was the first day of the 18th World Summit of Nobel Peace Laureates here in Pyeongchang, Gangwon province in Korea. So many workshops are planned here at the World Summit. Workshops are important because that's the moment where Nobel Peace Prize winners encounters the students arrived here from all over the world to listen to their legacy and to their stories.
I'm determined. I don't have a gun, but my face is more than an AK-47.
It's an amazing platform for young people connecting and working together.
Stubbornness is important. Don't give up.
Should discuss how can we empower our voices to stop all this deterioration.
These opportunities to meet and dialogue with young people are so important because it's an excellent opportunity for us to think about the world that we want to see in the future.
Now we will officially open panel discussion 2, Open Scars of War. I will now hand over the microphone to Ambassador Kyung-seo Park. So let's invite him onto stage with a big round of applause.
May I invite 4 panelists on a stage? Kindly sitting on a chair. Good morning. I hope everybody slept well, and we will continue our common mission and a common vocation, say stronger together, peacemaking, peace advocacy. This session has been designed aftermath of Korean War. As you know, 1950 until 1953, full 3 years, Korean experienced the human tragedy, saying Korean War. Yesterday, I have indicated the casualties 4 million. UN troops with 17 member state soldiers, Korean civilian, Korean soldiers, Chinese soldiers, all together 4 million, became victims of this war. The tragedy as a human being, especially Koreans, still suffering. This session will be served for the aspect of what kind of a war aftermath still ongoing among the Korean people. That will be designated for the first session of our session, digging what kind of a human tragedy and the aftermath are continuing here, such as, we have still counting exactly 48,200 separate families. First generation are still longing for their family reunion, or they will be visiting their homeland in North Korea. Still, mines should be very difficult to digging a mine and then dissolve this. But we are still doing this. And then some families, because they are long time longing to their home country, they become a psychological defect. That we will be dealing with in the first part of second session. And the second part, we will be present kind of an action plan to solve this problem. So I will open this. As you know, we are a little bit late now, and also we maximum 1 hour, 15 minutes or 20 minutes are given for us. So I would like to propose to the panelists to keep, time. So let me invite the first speaker, Outlet Bookman. And before that, may I invite in Christine Ann will say from her viewpoint about our struggle on this. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Park, and thank you, all of you, and all the hard staff here in Gangwon who have made this conference so fabulous. In the US, the Korean War is known as the Forgotten War, despite the fact that more than 3 million people were killed in just 3 years. As a Korean American, I find it especially painful that the US divided the peninsula without consulting a single Korean and installed into power Koreans who collaborated with the Japanese after Korea was brutally colonized by Japan for 35 years. During the Korean War, the the US waged an indiscriminate bombing campaign, destroying 80% of North Korean cities. 1 year into the war, US Major General Emmett O'Donnell testified before the Senate, quote, "There are no more targets in Korea," end quote. While most of us are led to believe that the nuclear crisis began with North Korea, it actually began during the Korean War, when President Truman threatened to use atomic weapons. Then the US introduced them into South Korea in 1958, where they were until George Bush Sr. removed them. The US also backed authoritarian rule in South Korea for decades. And in 1980, the US supported Chun Doo-hwan, a military strongman who shot his way to power after massacring pro-democracy protests in Gwangju. When you look at past inter-Korean agreements that attempted to build peace, the US has been a major roadblock. In 2018, when the two Koreas tried to link the railroad at Dorasan Station, the US stopped it, saying it violated UN Security Council sanctions. When the former South Korean president, Moon Jae-in, appealed to President Biden for an end-of-war declaration, he was shunned. As a Korean American, I feel my country's responsibility to end the Korean War. Right now, tensions are the worst since the era of fire and fury in 2017, when President Trump threatened to totally destroy North Korea. According to the US Congressional Research Service, if another war broke out in Korea, more than 300,000 people would be killed in the first few days of fighting. And if nuclear weapons were used, more than 20 million people would be killed. This is not normal. It's not normal for 80 million people to live in a perennial state of war. It is not normal for doctors to have to perform surgery with dull scalpels and reuse brown gauze due to sanctions. It's not normal for people to not be able to travel freely or return to their hometowns. It's not normal that nearly 30,000 foreign troops have occupied another country for 73 years. It is not normal for families, husbands and wives, parents and their children, siblings, aunts and uncles, to be able to hug their loved ones for decades. It is not normal that our governments invest in constant preparation for war. In 2006, I witnessed one of the most heartbreaking struggles that forever changed my understanding of this war. I had traveled to Pyeongtaek, 50 miles south of Seoul, where farmers were resisting the expansion of the US Camp Humphreys military base. They used every nonviolent tactic that they could to save their rice fields, which they had cultivated for 3 generations. Grandmothers tied themselves to the roofs of their homes to prevent them from being bulldozed. After holding candlelight vigils for 800 days, they lost. And now their former home has become the world's largest military base, spanning 3,500 acres, which is about the size of 4 New York Central Parks. Sadly, the unresolved Korean War and the US-China great power competition is used to justify more militarization, whether it's the naval base on Jeju Island or the THAAD missile defense system in Seongju. As a result, communities are shattered, livelihoods upended, and ecosystems destroyed. But it doesn't have to be this way. 4 years ago, here in Pyeongchang during the Winter Olympics, the 2 Koreas marched together carrying the One Korea flag, ushering a new era of peace. Leaders from North Korea, South Korea, and the US engaged in diplomacy that resulted in the halting of all nuclear and long-range missile testing and war drills. North and South Korean soldiers demined portions of the DMZ. Families reunited, and there was the creation of the liaison office in Kaesong. Yet what has plagued progress is the unresolved Korean War. That's why we are calling on the US, North Korea, and South Korea to formally end the 73-year-old Korean War with a peace agreement. We must do so for the separated families, for the struggling North Korean people, for those killed and mutilated by landmines, and all Korean people here and in the diaspora whose hearts are still divided. Let's redirect resources away from militarization towards investments that give us genuine security, such as healthcare, education, housing, clean air, and water. I would like to end with the words of Kim Ji-tae, the Pyeongtaek village leader who was imprisoned for resisting the US base expansion. When asked by the South Korean Defense Ministry for the price of his land, he replied, quote, "The price will be unimaginably high. The price must include every grain of rice grown and harvested here. It must include all of our efforts to grow them, as well as our whole life here, including our sighs, our tears, and our laughter. The price must include the stars which have witnessed our grief and joy, and the wind which has dried our tears. If all of these could be added, I would tell you the price." Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to invite and Wadet Pochamawi for 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. I'm really delighted to be with you today. Thank you so much for the invitation, and thank you so much for to all this the team from the permanent secretary. So happy to be in this place, very important place, and this very wonderful and powerful country. My hope is maybe next time when we'll come back to South Korea, we'll find a united country and we avoid this war. It's really my hope and my dream. I think nowadays we are living very tough situation everywhere. We have conflicts everywhere in each part of this world. And we have tensions, we have conflicts, we have mass displacement, we have disorders, we have insecurity, we have fear, and we are looking for something special. We're looking for something particular, and we need peaceful solution. As Nobel Peace Prize laureate and as I'm an activist in the civil society, for me, I beg all the politicians and all the political parties to at least to listen to us, to listen to the civil society, to listen to the youth, to listen to the women, and just to find really a peaceful solution together. We need to listen to each other. We need to understand each other. We need to accept our differences, and also we need to accept that we can live together. The world is immense, it's big. There is a place for each one of us with our differences, with our different colors, with our different religions. So why we are in this kind of situation? Why we are suffering? Why people they are suffering? Why people they don't have their basic rights? Because there is no political will. And I think it's our task and it's our job, we as a civil society, to do something. I have this example in Tunisia. We went through dictatorship for long years, but thanks to the civil society, because the civil society was aware that we had to do something to change Tunisia, to change this environment there, the political environment there, and also thanks to the women. Women were there, were present, and also thanks to the youth, because the youth were also aware that they have to contribute, they have to be a part of the changement, and they have to give their opinions in different steps of our transition. And I think that's why we need the civil society to be more aware that they have to play this role, to find solution and to ask for solution and to be a part of the solution. That's we are able to change. We are able to defend our common interests if we have to forget our ego. We have to forget that we are looking for something for ourselves. We need to not to be selfish, but to think of this new generation, to think for them, to think for their better life. So it's very important for us to contribute in this and to build a kind of modern lives, to build modern countries, and also to be a part of this kind of, let's say, soft revolution. Coming back to South Korea and what is happening today, I think it's, I don't accept this when we are in this developing country where we can, people, they are so kind. People, they are loving life, and they are loving each other. Why till now we are, looking for a solution? Why till now there is no, an intervention from the United Nations, from the international community, just to reduce the tension? We have tension, as I said, everywhere. But I think what we do need now is really a call from this conference, a call from all these Nobel Peace Prize laureates to ask for at least to give us a time to understand each other and to find a peaceful solution. I'm always optimistic, and I think we'll find a solution. And let's, stay like this, and for maybe next time when we'll come back to this place and to South Korea, we'll be more satisfied, and we'll have more, let's say, good vibes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Now, next speaker, Dr. Ruth Michel. You have a plenary.
Thank you so much. It is an honor and a privilege to be here with all of you. I'm indebted to the organizers, to our local hosts, for their extraordinary generosity and the kind welcome that we've experienced here. I come for the first time to a summit such as this, and it is also my first time in Korea. And I come as a humble learner. I'm not Korean, I'm not American, but I am a doctor. And it is my role to bear witness to the wounds of war, the suffering, and the cost of war. What we saw 2 days ago on our trip to the DMZ really stayed in my heart. Bearing witness to the cost of this terrible war has really touched me. When we think of the thousands of families divided, we think of the millions of lives lost, we think of the ongoing burden of trauma that is carried by every family who has been touched by this. It's an enormous set of wounds that spans 2 countries, and which also, as you have mentioned, extends into the diaspora, the Korean diaspora, around the world. The Korean spirit is a remarkable thing, and most of us have only experienced it up till now through the extraordinary generosity and flavors of Korean food. So it's a delight to be able to eat with you here and share of your cultural strengths and your wisdom. But it's also important for us to share in your pain and to feel viscerally the discomfort that comes with the recognition of an ongoing conflict. And coming to this as I do from the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, I think it's so important to acknowledge what Christine's also already referenced, which is that the nuclear threat built into this conflict was baked in a long time ago, long before North Korea developed a nuclear program. And for me, that highlights that there are no safe hands for nuclear weapons, and that there is nobody who can be trusted with these. And that when we live in a world with the threat of nuclear weapons as a way of exerting power, we inevitably lead each other astray, and we lead to the scenario where threatening to use nuclear weapons and develop them is seen as a sign of strength. I'd like us to come together and redefine that, and to find strength in connection, relationship, and community, instead of expensive, devastating destruction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You made, as a medical doctor, a great input. Thank you. Next speaker is Ko Yu Kyung, Korean. Yes,
네,
please.
감사합니다.
Thank you very much. Today, I'm participating in this discussion, so it is my great pleasure, and I'm very happy to meet you. In this city of Pyeongchang, we are hosting this World Summit of Nobel Peace Laureates, so I would like to extend my appreciation to the organizer and staff members. And today, we have so many participants. I hope you find this meeting meaningful so that we can create peace in Korea and expand it to the global stage. As Mr. Park just mentioned, the aftermath of the Korean War was really terrible. And even nowadays, after even 70 years, still people cannot visit their hometown and cannot meet their family members. So we can realize that the war has not ended. And when it comes to the landmine against the human, it is the evidence that war has not been ended. In 1999, there was an international convention against the mine against the human. However, still, landmine is still used. June last year, according to the Ottawa Accord, the U.S. government officially announced that it will ban the use of landmine. However, the Korean Peninsula was excluded, and the Ministry of National Defense is spending lots of money to remove the landmine, but it was not enough. Still, we can see the explosion of landmine, and there are many casualties. Despite the effort of the Ministry of National Defense, why it is not addressed yet? It is because still our direction is not that clear. We have not determined that we will not use the landmine, and we still have the possibility of using landmine on the Korean Peninsula. So we cannot spend lots of money to remove landmine. And it is the same across the world. In Korea, we have the nuclear umbrella policy of the US, and in North Korea, they have a condition for using nuclear weapons. In order to prevent and defend from the nuclear weapons, can we select the nuclear weapon as a countermeasure? And can we avoid the aftermath of the nuclear weapons? I think we need to find the answers for that. Last but not least, I would like to mention about women and in relation with war. In 2015 December, there was an agreement between the foreign ministers in Japan and Korea, and based on this agreement, they said that we will not discuss this women issue in the global stage. However, the victims were excluded from this discussion, and the then president of Korea, highly praised this agreement, and the president then also praised that this is an agreement between the US, Korea, and Japan. There were so many women who suffered for a long time due to the Japanese colonialism, and they started raising their voices in the 1940s, and they mustered their courage to express their difficulties, and they are still suffering from this. There are many courageous women activists, and they are faced with the agreement between the US, Japan, and Korea. Koreans are very familiar with the agenda that we should not talk about our personal agenda when we talk about national security. And many countries justify this. But our women activists say that it is not right, and we are not hesitating to tell the truth. For a long time, Korea suffered from the aftermath of the Korean War, and still we are suffering from the aftermath. And we can see the evidence of the aftermath of the war. And instead of reproducing conflicts and hatred, we need to practice peace. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Now we have heard about the aftermath, which is still ongoing struggle of the Koreans after having a Korean War for 3 years in the 1950 up to the 1953. Based on our struggle currently, I would like now to ask a panelist how we can solve this problem as a priority. It will take long, but what is the direction of our common struggle? That means stronger is together. As a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, how we can go together to solve this problem, making an action plan. Each one has 3 minutes again, because I was asked by the secretariat, would you please conclude this particular session in 10 before 11, something like this. All right? Christine?
Thanks, Dr. Park. I think we could do it in 3 ways. Number one, we need to build the political will for peace. And in the United States, as I mentioned, it's called the Forgotten War, a grassroots movement led by the Korea Peace Now Grassroots Network, which is our transnational campaign, which we invite all of you to be a part of. We worked with members of Congress who introduced the Peace on the Korean Peninsula Act. And it's a bill that is calling for the Biden administration to negotiate a permanent settlement of the Korean War. And I don't know, we have about 50 co-sponsors of this bill, and it may not seem like a lot, but actually 10 years ago, on the 60th anniversary of the Korean War, we could only get 2 members of Congress to support peace on the Korean Peninsula, much less a peace agreement. And one of those 2 members of Congress was Barbara Lee, who many of you may know was the only only US Congresswoman who voted to not allow the Bush administration to wage a war in Afghanistan and Iraq. So that, I think, is huge progress. The second is we need to center the voices of those that are most impacted. So the divided families, North Korean people who are being impacted by sanctions, the people that are living around military bases. I think we really need to change the narrative, because when we think about the Korean War, we just hear about the military exercises, nuclear weapons. Yes, those are all devastating and dangerous, but there are the ongoing costs of this war. And as the opening speaker said, peace doesn't just happen. It takes hard work, it takes courage, it takes perseverance and resilience, and it requires new voices that have fresh ideas and thinking, and so that's why women must be mobilized to be a part of this peace process.
Yes. All right. Now, with that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think peace is a set of knowledge, values, attitudes, and skills, and we need to live together in harmony for ourselves and for others. And as you said, I mean, conflicts are affecting women's lives, but women are excluded from all, let's say, the majority of resolution and solution for conflicts. And, you know, we have to be, women should participate, and their participation is essential because, you know, it's a way to create an inclusive society. And the number of women involved in peace table is very, very, very low. That's why we have to maybe to train women to be mediator, conciliator, and to be part of the solution. And it's a way to also to think that we need to have this diversity in our society, and we need to have an inclusive society. We have to give more chance to reach women, and because I think women, when they are included in this kind of agreement and solution, they are able to add something. They are able to change something. They are able also to be different and to give different opinions. So also, I think as my background is entrepreneurship, I think it's very important to involve the private sector, because the private sector should play a role. We have this experience in Tunisia and in Colombia, and I think it's very important that we have to include them. They have, because they are a part of the civil society, and maybe they can create more dignity. They are creating. They are able to create jobs. They are also able to create kind of stability in the area and in the region. It's very important to involve them, and they can be kind of support for the youth. The role of this private sector, I think, for me, is crucial, and we have to be able to be a part of the solution. Third, I think what is very important is the communication, information, and all the social medias. We can use, and I think this is the role of the youth, to use this social media to give the right and the correct information, and to change this some ideas, and to avoid some stereotypes, and just to have calls for more peace, for more stability. And I think it's our role also as Nobel Peace Prize Laureates to be kind of models. We can show the way, we can give some recommendation, we can also give the path how we can build a strong and a peaceful way, but we have to adapt it, because it depends on the environment, it depends on the country, but I think the main rules are together everywhere. All of us, we are looking for stability, we are looking for peace, and we are looking for dignity. And it's difficult and it's impossible to have dignity if you are not free. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And it is clear now that strong suggestion has been made. Any initiatives for the peaceful advocacy on Korean Peninsula, women participation and the youth participation should be welcome. Now, Ruth, Michelle?
Thank you. I think that the crux of the matter is something that you said about, being told to not have your personal agenda, instead think about national security. And we have to think about what the personal agenda of women is. The personal agenda of women is peace, stability, and dignity for themselves, their families, and their communities. Absolutely, that is what national security should be based on. It's what it should be defined by. So we need a new conception of what security is. What kind of world are we trying to live in together? And that is why, as everyone up here has said, we have to have women at the table, because if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so I think we really have to see that this is imperative to have a just and sustainable peace in any of the conflicts that we see around the world. And I think it's also important that we have to take the weapons of war off the table. And what this means is we have to be thinking about the next conflict, the next crisis elsewhere in the world. And we have to understand that as long as there are nuclear weapons in the world, people who think that national security is about who has the bigger guns are going to continue to reach for them. They will continue to be a status symbol, and they will continue to be seen as a solution to all of your worries. But we know that they're expensive, and we know that any resources being spent, for example, by North Korea on developing a nuclear program are costing the social determinants of health terribly. We know that what people need to be healthy and well is healthcare, clean water, medicines, education. And we know that these things cost money too. So I want to encourage you to imagine with me a world without nuclear weapons where we have more resources for peace building, and to imagine a world where women are at the tables of power, making decisions together, finding common ground, and redefining security.
Thank you very much. And as a medical doctor, you have said clearly denuclearization on Korean Peninsula with a high cost, and we have to stop to the nuclearization weapons process, and then we switch those resources to the human beings' welfare. Okay, the last speaker will be Ko Yu-kyung, please.
Thank you very much. We are in a hostile situation, and more than 70 years we are in a divided country. But sometimes it was not that hostile. We had a dialogue, exchange, and cooperation in the past between the two Koreas. And the cooperation and exchange was most active when our civil society, cultural and art and academic people worked together. When they participated together, our exchange was very active, and the achievement we reached at the time left us a good memory, and it gives us a new hope that we can do that once again. I believe peace. Obviously, the government has their role, so their role is very imperative. However, in building peace, all the stakeholders related to peace building should be included, and then that peace will be sustainable, and that peace can stand tall regardless of the external factors. So in culture, academia, and sports, and women and youth, in our domain, we need to work together, and we need to meet the people we thought that they are enemy, and we need to listen to each other. And we also need to reflect ourselves why we failed despite all the efforts. It seems like we are from the scratch. However, we need to look back ourselves. And I believe the reason for failure is unfinished war. For the last 70 years, we were at war. So the war should be ended. Then we can move forward. In 2023, we'll commemorate the 70 years anniversary of the Truth Agreement. When the Truth Agreement was made, we thought that it will just last 1 year. However, it has lasted for the last 70 years. So there will be many actions to end the war. I hope you participate in that activities. And I hope the peace on the Korean Peninsula can be extended to the peace on the globe. Thank you very much.
Very strong appeal from a woman representative in Korea. And the next year will be a 70th year of a ceasefire treaty. So in order to end this ceasefire treaty to peace treaty, she said, appeal to the Nobel Peace Prize Laureate together with this process. Now, let me open the floor, inviting any comments, any advice from a floor is welcome. Please. If there is a no, as a moderator, oh yes, please. Mike?
My name is Ann Wright. I'm from the United States. I was a U.S. Army colonel and also a U.S. diplomat, resigned in opposition to the war in Iraq. The history of inter-Korean work for peace is strong. So how do we get our governments to continue this? All it is dialogue and negotiation, just talking instead of war games. How do we get the governments to start moving on this? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I give a 1 minute each panelist we will say to, and as a moderator, if there is a none, then the family reunion, as I have said, the 48,200 are still waiting for their reunion. Therefore, one of the high priority will be that one. Now, let me have a 1 minute each interventions as a final word of our panelists, starting from Christine.
Thank you, Dr. Park. My final words is I think we need, just as Ruth was saying, we need a fundamental reorientation of what makes us secure. I think for the Korea peace process, we need a new paradigm. And I think that the paradigm that the US and South Korea and other countries have used to achieve denuclearization has been one that has failed. It's been, we got to sanction North Korea, we've got to politically isolate them, we're going to conduct war drills to, counter North Korea's missile tests and nuclear weapons tests. And I think that's a really failed and broken approach. It's akin to putting a gun to North Korea's head and demanding their unilateral disarmament without addressing their security guarantees. And as I talked about at the beginning, when 80% of North Korean cities were completely devastated, it's hard to get this really traumatized nation to accept that their security and their sovereignty isn't considered and respected. So I think we need a new approach that is about a peace-first approach that doesn't dangle normalization at the end of a process, but that is actually at the beginning, that we work to normalize and then resolve some of the long-standing issues, such as denuclearization and human rights. I call on all of us to call for this peace-first approach.
I think for me, to your question, the real challenge of trying to get people to negotiate in good faith is to set up the conditions for that to happen properly. I remember seeing the Pyeongchang Olympics and feeling a pang of hope at two leaders together. And sometimes it takes the eyes of the world, the scrutiny of international media, and the opportunity for, a win-win situation to bring that about. I think we have to think very creatively and very hard about how we can have those moments again and more frequently, where people can come together, where it can be seen as a win for all sides to collaborate and cooperate. And that's going to take all of the wisdom in this room and all of the force of the peacemaking capabilities that we see here. Thank you.
With that,
I think all of us, we are devoted to the common good, respectful of the lives and rules of social life. For us, it's very important to respect the rules, to respect each other. And we do need negotiation, we do need mediation, and we do need dialogue. I think we do need peaceful ways to avoid conflicts, to postpone sometimes conflicts, and what is very important for me is we do need the political will. Without a political will, it's going to be difficult, to find the best solution. And I can add also, we do need, the involvement of the civil society. We have to play a key role, in finding our solution. And I think it's very important for us to find our solution without, waiting for others, to resolve the problem, and without waiting for others to show us the path. It's very important that we have to be included and we have to play our own role. Thank you so much.
Yes. Madam Ko Yukyo.
Creating peace, making peace, in particular in the hostile situation, when parties are conflicting with arms, it is very difficult. When we talk about peace, usually the government officials think that this is very naive. You don't know about reality. It is not feasible. But I would like to tell you about the power of naive belief about peace. Thanks to that naive belief, we now have the anti-nuclear treaty, and nuclear powers are not included in this treaty. However, non-nuclear power countries gather together to have this treaty, and those who are endorsing the nuclear power thought that this treaty will just fail. However, the activists made it successful. So I believe this story is very powerful. And it does not include physical violence. And I believe we can create something together. And on the Korean Peninsula, I believe this approach is possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our four panelists, you are woman, I am soul man. I am extremely happy for your tremendous contribution to the peace advocacy work on Korean Peninsula. 1970, I was reminded Willy Brandt, 1970 Nobel Peace Prize laureate. When he started his East policy with the East Germany at that time, he said, peace is not everything, but without peace, all are nothing. With this, overarching concern, he has succeeded reconciliation and cooperation and peaceful coexistence at that time, West and the East Germany. With all final word, thank you very much, our panelists. Thank you very much for our audience here. We go together. It is great encouragement by the Nobel Peace Prize for this, our struggle with your solidarity. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, again. I would like now to call on stage Nobel Peace Laureate Leima Bowie to give the motivation for the 2022 Peace Summit Medal for Social Activism.
Good morning, everyone. It is my absolute joy to be standing up here this morning to present this award. So let me take out the glasses. So one of my favorite people in the world, someone who embodies naive hope. Hope that one of the longest and most difficult conflict in the world can actually come to an end. Someone who hopes that citizen-to-citizen peace building in one of the longest conflicts in the world is possible. Someone who hopes that women can bring about the change that is needed in the world. Every year during the World Summit of Nobel Peace Prize Laureates, the summit presents a medal for social activism to a human rights activist in recognition of their positive impact on social activism generated in communities throughout the world. Former recipients of this award is Kerry Kennedy, Acadia Alivaris, Taraki Bahani, Michelle McCroth, and Mary Shuttleworth, who is here with us today. Mary, can you please stand so that we clap for you again? This year, we're giving this medal to a woman, as I stated earlier, that I'm in absolute awe of. She has fought all her life for freedom and peace for Korea. Christine An, today I stand here to honor your tenacity, to honor your courage, to honor your naive faith in humanity when all around us seem to be sinking. You continue to believe that even after 70 plus years, families can be reunited. The Korean people can see peace. On behalf of myself and all of the women who crossed the DMZ with you and my fellow Nobel Peace Prize winners, I am honored to give you this award and to say to you, never stop. Many years ago, I read a book and it says we were taught as African women to walk on tiptoe. You can't be too loud, you can't be. After I read that book, I told myself one of my biggest and greatest quotes will be never walk on tiptoes because you don't leave footprints that last. Christine, keep doing you. The world may not agree with you, but those who make history are always seen as crazy like myself. Congratulations. This is your moment, girl. Peace Summit Medal for Social Activism, 18 World Summit of Nobel Peace Prize Laureates, Pyeongchang 12 to 14, Christine Ang, my friend, my sister. Women who make history are not nice women, and I'm glad to know you. Congratulations, my darling. Okay, Christine, you are now asked to kindly come and accept this award. We want to hear from you, my darling. Congratulations.
Oh my goodness. I'm not prepared. Can you even see me? I'm gonna have to come over here. Okay. Oh my goodness. I want to first thank Lema because in 2009, I was working at the Global Fund for Women, and I worked by day for women's rights, and by night I was moonlighting as a Korea peace activist. And we brought Abigail Disney's film about Lema and the women of Liberia who worked for peace across religious lines, Muslim and Christian women. And I was so inspired by Lema and the work of the Liberian women that night I actually had a dream. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I turned on my home screen of the New York Times, and it was a story about the Imjin River that was flooding through the heart of the Korean Peninsula. And North Korea allegedly lifted the floodgates without consulting South Korea. And it was at that time Kim Jong-il and Lee Myung-bak. And they were two Korean men leaders, and they weren't talking. And I just thought, this is so ridiculous. And the result was people died because of the flooding. And I went back to sleep. I was so angry. And that's when I had the dream where I was wading in the river, in the Imjin River, and I was waiting for people to come down the river. And people were starting to come down, and it was this glow of light. And that light then morphed into family reunions, people embracing and hugging each other. And it was so beautiful, and I was so mesmerized by, as you've all seen, those images of elderly Koreans who haven't seen each other for 3 generations. But I wanted to keep going up the river to find the source of that light. And so I kept going up the river. And what did I come upon? I came upon a circle of women, and they were stirring something like witches in a big black pot. And then they poured whatever they did that were little vessels that then flowed down the river and became the light. And that's when I woke up and I said, oh, I know who will end the war. Women will end the war. And so it's so deeply moving to receive this award. I thank the Korean women. As many of you may have seen in the movie last night, it was Korean women that met for the first time in 1991. And it was women that went, international women that went during the Korean War to call for an end to the bombing, to the genocide. And so I'm just deeply humbled, and I want to deeply thank the Korean movements for peace, for democracy, for reunification, because you have shined a light on the world, whether it's the Gwangju families, the Jeju Island families, the comfort women, the Candlelight Revolution. I think South Korea and the movements for democracy have been such an inspiration to the world. I'm deeply honored to be considered Korean, and I am going to work for the rest of my life till this war ends. So thank you so much for the encouragement and support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like now to introduce you to an incredible girl from Japan. She's an inspiring peace activist, very young, and we're so excited to have her here. Her name is Rina Kawasaki, and she has just been awarded the prestigious 18th Annual International Children's Peace Prize. Rina's pioneering work to increase child participation in politics, the environment, and society in her home country, Japan, and across the world, has made her the leading youth advocate in Japan. The International Children's Peace Prize was launched in 2005 during the World Summit of Nobel Peace Laureates in Rome. Since then, each year, the prize has been presented by a Nobel Peace Prize winner. This year, it has been presented by Tawakkol Karman in The Hague, Holland. The International Children's Peace Prize is the most important and prestigious youth prize in the world. It has awarded annually a child who has made a significant contribution to advocating children's rights and improving the situation of vulnerable children. So please give your applause to Rina. Please, Rina, come here with us.
Most people know the beauty of my country. Kind people, good food, and world-leading industries. But something is very wrong. Every day in Japan, children and youth face injustice. Because as a child in my country, you don't have a voice. You don't speak up. You never give your opinion. Whether it be in schools, in local and national governments, or even in companies. There is no place for young people, yet expectations are so very high. And the consequences are devastating. 30% of our high schoolers in Japan suffer from depression. 24% suffer from suicidal thoughts. Too many young people have taken their own lives. But today I say enough is enough. It's time for change. My name is Rona Kawasaki. I'm 17 years old, and this is my story. It all started when I was 12. I saw a corrupt Japanese politician on TV who used taxpayers' money for private uses. That deeply impacted me in the sense that here was this grown-up man that was supposed to be protecting us and representing the people that don't have a voice. However, he had taken something away from the people and used it for his personal benefit. That day, I decided to stand up and speak out for myself and others to change my country. I started my own organization, Earth Guardians Japan. Together with other young people, we decided to be the change we want to see. We started raising our voices by organizing Zoom calls between us and our local political leaders to let them know that we want to be involved in decisions that impact our future. And they listened. Together with the local government, we spread QR codes all around the city to help youth give their opinion on what matters most to them.
30秒ぐらいで本当にすぐできるのに、その結果をちゃんと市の人が見てくれて、それをもとにこの市をより良いものにしてくれるって考えたら、ものすごくいい取り組みやなと思います。
Companies were next. I became the youngest chief future officer of a world leader in biofuel. I inspired them to really listen to the next generation, to the power and ideas that we have.
Lena is one of, for me, really passionate girl. She showed everything and passion for the transforming and updating to the next stage of the company.
That was a big step for me, definitely, because it made me be introduced into the entrepreneur side of Japan and how there were issues there as well as political. They were willing to take lots of risks for us, both societally and financially, to support our ideas. So I was very empowered by that. Then the city of Tokyo called. I was invited to help the government create a more sustainable and greener city for 37 million people. They even released an official statement that from now on, they will listen to and implement youth voices.
さっきと同じ答えになっちゃうかもしれないけれども、常に先を見ている。そして未来のことを常に心配していて、今我々が何をなすべきかということを教えてくれます。
It was such an invigorating moment because I felt so redeemed and that finally this government body that I didn't think would move and change for the minoritized youth are moving towards a positive future, which I thought was very inspiring. Yeah, I did it.
On your mark, get set, let's start.
this is just the beginning, a real breakthrough for child participation in Japan, in all layers of society.
Rena in one word is unreachable.
Passionate.
Devoted. Inspirational. Charismatic.
And hardworking.
From the time I met Rena, I was able to know how to take action in order to solve the issues that are occurring in the world.
You are never too young to make a change because age should not determine how qualified you are, because a lot of people say children are our future, but we're actually the present. And we're actually here right now, and we're the ones that are feeling the suffering together with the adults that are also feeling the suffering. So I think you're never too young to make a change because you're also a valuable member of society. My dream is for every child to be truly seen and heard. I will never stop this fight until this becomes a reality. My name is Rena Kawasaki, and I'm very honored and thankful to announce that I am the winner of the International Children's Peace Prize 2022.
Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. On behalf of the Kids' Rights Foundation, thank you to the World Summit of Nobel Peace Laureates for the privilege to speak at this significant event today. I am also honored to be featured in this book, Being Noble, which was distributed to all youth participating in this summit. I myself was so inspired by so many others in this book to start my activism. Having role models like the Nobel Peace Laureates helps remind us youth that nothing is too idealistic. Anything is possible. Most of you may be wondering who I am and who I represent. My name is Rena Kawasaki. I'm 17 years old, a high school senior, and most importantly, a child under the definitions set by the United Nations. Today, we have all gathered here to discuss peace, a concept that, from what I have gathered through my activism, fundamentally connected to and solved by communication between conflicting parties. In my opinion, one of the most significant conflicting parties today are the adults and the youth of our global community. I first started my fight for child participation back at home in Japan from a particular phenomenon I witnessed while walking to school. Every election season, political candidates take their microphones and line up in front of local stations, greeting and advocating their causes to students as they head into the stations to go to school. As I walk closer and closer to the candidates, the crowd's pace picks up, and I see students actively try not to make eye contact with these candidates as they head into these stations as quickly as they can. Currently, Japan's youth have been described as disconnected, uninterested in these issues discussed in politics in general. I believed at that time that this active avoidance of political candidates was just one of the manifestations of the supposed current situation of youth in Japan. In order to get youth interested in politics and social issues being discussed by our representatives, I started hosting small Zoom sessions between local politicians and high school students. What shocked both me and the politicians who participated were the emotional but yet constructive opinions given by the youth. As youth and politicians exchanged their opinions one by one, a high school senior quietly asked, "Why do you always listen to the adults, but not the youth? All the high schoolers who have participated here today have opinions, have ideas, have dreams. Why do you not listen?" The stark contrast between the stereotypes of youth and the youth that were present that day shocked the politicians. The answer to this contrast was pretty simple. These youth were never asked their opinion on any significant issue. They never felt listened to. They never felt that anyone would listen to them. Therefore, they stayed silent. The simple act of listening starts to break down barriers of stereotypes and biases. That day, politicians broke down their stereotypes of disengaged youth. The youth, in turn, broke down their stereotypes of uninterested and unapproachable politicians. We, the youth, are always told we are your future. However, I firmly believe that this statement is incorrect. We, the youth, are existing right here, right now. We have much of a responsibility and the right to speak up as any other party. We are a part of the present as much as you. Youth are the present. I strongly believe peace should be a collective effort between all parties existing in the present. Listen to us. Listen to the youth around you. Have you listened intently and with respect to your students, your children, your grandchildren? We complete the narrative. We will help solve the pressing issues of today, which are not just your burdens, but ours. We will in turn listen with respect and fight to work with you. We have more in common than we all think. In the wise words of Nobel Peace Prize laureate and patron of the International Children's Peace Prize and the Kids' Rights Foundation, Desmond Tutu, listen, listen, listen. But most importantly, don't forget to act. Thank you.
It's amazing that at 17, she initiated a Zoom call with the local government so that Japanese youth can give opinions. And from that to winning the International Children's Peace Prize, I'm just mesmerized by her efforts and all the things that she has done. So I wish that the change you inspired will continue, and also that the Japanese government and the world will listen to what the youth has to say. So from that, we'll move on to panel discussion now. So the panel discussion 3, and the topic will be Planet in Labor. So now I would like to invite our moderator, Executive Director of FWD Clerk, David Stewart. So please invite him with a warm round of applause onto the stage. Mr. Stewart, if you're present, please come up on stage. As I've just said, panel 3's topic will be in Planet in Labor and Human Security. So the topic today will be, with no shadow of a doubt, our planet is in distress, as all of you know, like a woman in labor expecting a newborn baby. So a pandemic locked us down all for 2 years and has repeat over 6 million lives. Food security is at high risk, threatening millions of lives around the world. Wars in Eastern Europe is continuing. So let's hear from our moderator and panelists. So I will hand over the floor to you now.
Welcome to the third session, The World in Labor. I'd like to invite the other panelists to join me. I see one of them, Thomas Seltzer, who's the Dean of the International Anti-Corruption Academy. And I'd like to introduce Kailash Satyarthi, who's Nobel Peace Laureate 2014. Hi. And I would like to introduce Dr. Shirin Ebadi, Nobel Peace Laureate 2003. And Ash Pachari from POP, that is Protect Our Planet, son of Nobel Peace Laureate Rajendra Pachari. After COVID, a new world is being born. We don't yet know what this new world is going to be like. But there are a lot of problems with the infant. We look at Ukraine. This is not just another war. This is the end of what we had imagined was an order of world peace. When one country, when a superpower invades another country, the world must wake up and consider the implications. One of the implications is that countries around the world will feel insecure. They will see that the Ukraine abandoned its nuclear weapons. They will start thinking maybe the only way we can defend ourselves is by acquiring our own nuclear weapons. And that's an enormous threat of proliferation. The war itself poses the threat, the unacceptable threat of nuclear exchanges. Even if that threat is only 1% likely, it would constitute one of the greatest problems that mankind is facing right now. Would you get into a plane that had a 1% chance of crashing? What about if there are thousands of millions of people on the plane? So this is something we cannot ignore. We also have to think about the tensions developing in this part of the world. We've seen here in Korea the abiding scar of division, the threat posed still of nuclear weapons on this peninsula. We're worried about the future of Taiwan, of the possibility of a deterioration of relations between Taiwan and the People's Republic of China. These are serious threats. And then we have the long-term threat of climate change. The world is now rallying to try and meet the targets that have been set by COP. This is another huge threat to mankind. And then the other one is that COVID has disrupted the international economy. Trillions of dollars have been printed. Countries now are facing the threat of inflation. There are dark warnings of a financial crisis lying ahead. So this is the new infant that we have to deal with. This is the new infant that is arriving after COVID. And we're going to be asking our panelists to give us their views on this new world, the dangers that it represents, and possible solutions. So I would like to ask, first of all, Dr. Shirin Ebadi, what her perspectives are on the new world the dangers that we face.
Use headsets, please. She will be speaking in Farsi. Please use headsets. First, I want to greet everyone. And then I want to talk about security. But, of course, we know that there is danger in many areas of the world. I come from the Middle East. In the Middle East, every day, hundreds of people are killed, either in wars or by terrorists. And I want to start with my country, Iran. It's been years that Iran has been sanctioned. And the conditions are sort of similar to what goes on in North Korea. The reason that the sanctions exist is that Iran is after nuclear energy, but they don't want the IAEA to monitor them closely. And they have taken actions, and which has created a suspicion in the world that we want to make atomic bombs in Iran. And informally, we have learned that uranium has been enriched up to 90%. This means that we are very close to making an atomic bomb. The government of Iran denies that and says that, no, this is just an energy, and I want to use it in order to produce electricity. But they lie, because there's a lot of sun in Iran, and the hottest area in the world is in the desert in Iran. And in the summer, it goes above 70 degrees Celsius. So with spending much less money, we can have solar energy. And if the government of Iran wants electricity, then they can go after solar energy. So their program is not really correct. And that is why we've been sanctioned, exactly like North Korea, and it has resulted in poverty and food insecurity. On the other hand, the government of Iran, with all the money that it has, intervenes in other countries like Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and of course Lebanon. So there is no security in those countries either. But what is the solution? I will give you a short answer, both for Iran and countries like Iran, like North Korea. I think the solution is democracy. So, because people don't fight with each other. It's the governments and the dictators that are extremely ambitious politically and they have taken the security of people as hostages. As a result, in many countries, due to the intervention of Iran, there's war going on, there are conflicts, and also inside of Iran. As a result of the poverty that has been created and the hunger and the violence that has been created, people don't feel secure. This morning, a 23-year-old young man was executed, and his charge was that he had expressed his views in the form of mottos against the government. So this means that in Iran, even talking can bring you execution. So this has resulted in the uprising of the people, and there is a revolution going on. And I hope that when we participate in next year's summit, I can tell you that democracy has come to Iran. And I hope that one day we can have this summit in democratic Iran. Thank you.
Rabadi. I'd now like to call on Kailash to give us his views on the new infant.
Thank you. We are aware that the world is facing compounded crisis, compounded threats. But we are also passing through conflicting, sometimes competing priorities, political priorities and social and economic priorities. So when we talk of peace, perhaps we have to look at various dimensions and phases of peace. Many of us have been saying that peace is not just absence of war, but something else also. For me, the most bright, illuminated face of peace is the face of a smiling child who smiles in freedom and fearlessness. Until unless we solve many of such crises and threats, we cannot see and experience the face of peace in the last child of human family. Today, when a child in Pakistan asked me, who was stitching footballs and having scars and injuries on her fingers, an 8-year-old girl, I asked, what is your dream? And she says that, what is khwab, what is dream? When I insisted, she said, one day I wanted to play with this football. In India, the children who make toys, they have no dream to play with them. In Bogota, streets of Bogota, a teenager mother told me that you can't do anything for me, but if you can help educate my little child, that would be your contribution for the world peace. This is peace for me, that mother, that child. Dear friends, world has never been so richer. In last couple of years, a new billionaire is born. It's produced every week. But every day in sub-Saharan Africa, 10,000 children are pushed into slavery, trafficking, child labor, child pornography, and some of them are pushed into war and insurgencies every day. We will talk about the solutions. In fact, we know the problems, most of the problems. So many institutes, so many think tanks, so many universities, so many political dialogues are talking about the problems and also talking about the solutions. But what needed is honesty. What needed is the strong resilience and will. What needed is compassion. What needed is morality. What needed is what we think, what we talk, and what we do. There should be some sync in it. And finally, we have to think that what contribution we are making in our own way in restoring peace in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Kailash. I'd now like to call on Thomas Seltzer to give us his perspectives on human security and where we are today.
Thank you very much. It's good to be back. You remember I used to represent the United Nations at this summit for many years, and now I'm back as the Dean of the International Anti-Corruption Academy. I fully agree with the bleak and the very sober assessment of the world today. But the world is not at a stage of where human beings are, the human race is in question. We are dealing with the extinction of the human race at this time. But the world is not there because the world is bad or creation is bad. It is there because we brought it there. We're living in a time which by many is called the Anthropocene. That means anthropos, the man, has finally an impact on his environment, which is positive or negative. Obviously, it has been quite negative because we are facing a huge concentration of different crises. But at the same time, it is us who can pull the world out of this crisis. And it's not too late. And facing so many young people here, I want to appeal to you to get moving and no longer accept that our generation is misusing and wasting the resources which are there for you to secure your being and your good living and your life. So I appeal to you to become active. How? Well, we also have strategies. There's something positive too in the world today. When I worked in the United Nations, and unfortunately the United Nations are not represented at this summit, this is why I'm wearing at least a tie in the color of the United Nations, as David does, as I see. We have negotiated a few years ago, the 193 countries of the world, members of the United Nations, the so-called Sustainable Development Goals. This was a huge achievement. We all negotiated, we all agreed, and we all agreed on implementation. So we have a strategy that, if implemented, will not only save the world, but it will enable us to live well in this world. I see that I have only 3 minutes from the first intervention. I'll stop here, but I hope that I will get another opportunity later to continue. Thank you.
You have 44 seconds left.
Sorry, I have 44 seconds. I take advantage of them, You always have to stop diplomats, but once they have a microphone in their hand, they don't stop talking, but I'm just watching the clock here. No, the Sustainable Development Goals, they put into 17 baskets, into 70 goals, our common future. All the vulnerabilities that we are addressing. Not from a state perspective, but from a human perspective, from an individual perspective. This is the big advantage, this is the big move forward. This is human security. When I started my multilateral work in 1990, in the first committee of the United Nations representing Austria, the first committee is the main committee of the United Nations dealing with security and disarmament issues. There was no concept of human security yet. We only talked about nuclear threat, about weapons of mass destruction. I remember my very first conference that I attended was on the amendment of the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. This sounds like long history done in the meantime. In the meantime, we have made really advanced. We have negotiated the real Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. We didn't have, which is complete and total, which is very often not really recognized. So there were very big advances. But in the meantime, in 1994, the UNDP coined the expression of human security in its first report, its first human development report. And this is people-centered. This looks at all the vulnerabilities from a human perspective. Cui bono, the old Roman question, who do we benefit for? Our life is not abstract. What we do is benefiting people, all of you. You know, it's us who are responsible for our fate and for the fate of the world. So when you remember the Millennium Development Goals, introduced in the year 2000 with a 15 years implementation phase, they were then replaced by a successor regime, the Sustainable Development Goals, which are really the agreed strategy for a better future of the world. But now here I stop. Now I have taken advantage of my first slot. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. And now I'd like to ask Ash Pachari to give us a youth perspective on these problems.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by saying how deeply privileged I am to be here. Wish to thank the Secretariat, the incredible people that we're surrounded by over here. And I'm here really deeply inspired and very honored to be with all of you. And I'd like to say also that I'm very grateful to have a chance to speak after some incredible perspectives we've received already on this subject. When in 2007, I accompanied my dad to Oslo to receive the Nobel Peace Prize on behalf of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. My father had spent 13 years as chairman of the IPCC, and by the end of that time, he was absolutely convinced it was going to take a groundswell of action led by the youth of the world, the 1.8 billion young people in the world, to address the issue of climate change. And I want to bring the issue of climate change within the context of the many crises that we're talking about here today. Peace being at the very heart of it. And what I want to say is that we set up together what's called the POP movement, a spin on POP, where POP stands for Protect Our Planet. The idea is to mobilize the youth of the world to take action inspired by knowledge. And that knowledge is the science of climate change and understanding of the many, many, many dimensions of our lives that are affected as a consequence of global warming, changes in climate. And we talk about the Paris Agreement, we talk about 1.5 degrees, we talk about the fact that we're already at 1.1 degrees, but I want to point out that it is about each of the things that our amazing speakers have already brought up. It's about human beings. You may call it 1.1, you may call it 1.5, very scary indeed, and I want to say that in some parts of the world we're already way beyond 2, getting up to 4 degrees centigrade, but it's about people, because climate change, the absence of peace, the disruption to peace, affects every one of us. And I want to say at the heart of the POP movement, we have people who may or may not know how to call climate change, because at the end of the day, they don't have food to put on the table. They're running from home because they're in conflict areas. 200 million people that are displaced on an annual basis by the end of this year, who don't have water to drink. And those that just have no livelihood. They don't have a roof over their heads. Or like people we work with who had to put their beds up all the way to the ceiling for 3 years to survive because they had water, not because of torrential rain, but because of plastic that's blocking drainage systems, and no one's there to fix it. So unless we come together, stronger together, which is what we are about here today, we're not going to get there. And I just want to say we will go to Iran to get together, stronger together, because it's the people. And we have to found our work and our voices and our values and our wisdom on human rights. It can't happen if you're going to leave people behind. So it's about each one of us. It's about women. It's about young people. It's about the most vulnerable communities. It's about indigenous communities, all of whom we've taken for granted, which is why we're where we are. So unless we amplify voices and we get together and take action, because it isn't about them, it's all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ash. We now have a video by Sean Connor of the International Peace Bureau. He's going to participate also in our debate now with his message.
Dear friends and colleagues, it is no secret that our planet is in distress. It is impossible to say that there is just one single root cause to all the challenges we are facing these days. In fact, many of the causes overlap and amplify one another. Therefore, rather than trying to simplify the multiple threats that we are facing at this moment, I would like to highlight just one that interacts with many others. This is militarized security. Security, as offered and promulgated by states, is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the term. Rather than focusing on what truly protects the people within its given borders, states emphasize their own security, and particularly their military as a means of protecting it. Militarization makes us less safe. It contributes to an arms race, threatens adversaries, and steals resources from where they could be better used, meeting the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, for example. They actively contribute to climate change. A recent report from the Scientists for Global Responsibility estimates that global militaries account for 5.5% of overall greenhouse gas emissions. And militaries can do nothing to actively fight against transnational or transborder threats to security, from pandemics and climate change to global inequality and hunger. Without a reimagining of what security really means, we will continue down a path of war and destruction. Thank you.
So our panelists have given us a very good analysis of many of the challenges facing our planet. They have also begun to point out ways in which we can enhance human security. I would like to put a question now to them. Following the Ukraine war, the idea of an international order based on rules, international rules-based order, received a body blow. I'd like to ask the panel what they think about this. Is there a future for a rules-based international order? And if not, what is going to replace it? Can I ask Thomas to start the discussion?
There has to be an international order. Otherwise, I spend all my life, in the international system where we try to manage this international order. And we have built it. We have built enormous progress in the last 20 years. And the Sustainable Development Goals is just the pinnacle of that. And also the Paris Agreements, of course, and climate change. This is all part of the international order. Unfortunately, the international order was undermined in the last 5, 6, 7 years by key players, but not enough to make them crumble. They are still there, and they're still resilient. So what is happening right now in Ukraine, of course, is a total tragedy. And this is the negation of what we have built since the Second World War, an international order of peace, which excluded intervention by one country, an invasion of one country to the other one. So this is a blatant disruption of the international law, of all agreements, of all of our understanding. So hopefully we'll resolve this and we'll return to a rules-based management of international affairs. You know, security, as it was said before, is a big concept. You know, peace is a big concept. Peace is not only the absence of war. The opening paragraph of the 2005 document of the World Summit at the United Nations starts with, there is no peace without development, and there's no just development without human rights. So these are the three pillars of our security. Is development, it's inclusive, sustainable development, built on human rights, which will enable just and sustainable peace. And this is what we have to aim for, people-centered. And here we made progress, the Sustainable Development Goals. You know, I cannot, and they've been mentioned several times, and they cannot be overrated because they are our blueprint, our strategy for the future. If we are able to implement them, we'll have a sunny future. If we're not able to implement them, I think our prospects are bleak. How to implement them? Now, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, inherited from his predecessor two huge achievements from Ban Ki-moon, the Korean Secretary General, who used to be my boss for many years and who I'm going to see on Thursday to report to him about what I've been doing ever since we split. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General, inherited two huge achievements, the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and the Paris Agreements. The UN is in the lead to help member states, the world, implement these two agreements. Now, the Paris Agreements, they're taking on, new big energy, also the private sector. We have seen what's happening, at the last COP in Sharm el-Sheikh a few weeks ago. There is progress and there is hope. We might not reach all the goals right now, but there is movement and dynamics. With Sustainable Development Goals, it's the United Nations who are in charge. And here we are stuck. Why? Because we cannot raise the money for the implementation. So the Secretary General knows exactly that his tenure will be evaluated by how far he gets with implementing what he inherited from his predecessor. So he's trying to raise the money to implement for the implementation of the SDGs. But he goes to his member states and says, how can I help member states increase tax revenues in the hope that some of this money will be channeled towards SDG implementation? Member states come to him and say, Secretary General, we would love to support you, but after COVID, we have no money. We have parachuted trillions of dollars into stabilizing our economies during the COVID pandemic. Now we have no money. So there's no money right now. So he's stuck. But he looks at one source of money, which is very important. I'm going to take 2 more minutes, if I may, going over time, because I just want to finish this one argument. Secretary General looks at what we call illicit financial flows, which are siphoning out trillions every year from productive economies and cannot be compensated for, neither by direct investments, nor by official development assistance, nor by remittances. These illicit financial flows, which are made up basically by 4 elements: tax evasion, tax avoidance, bribery, and corruption. This is the money that we have to look for to finance implementations of the Sustainable Development Goals. I continue when I get the floor the next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Dr. Abadi, what rules would you like to see in the world? In a world where international rules are under pressure, what do you think the rules should be, and who do you think should make them?
When I first started talking, I did not address the issues that the UN has. And then I'll tell you which laws I think are important. So the UN actually gets its power from states. So, since all of the states that are members are not the real representatives of their people, most of them, because there is no democracy in their countries. Their elections have not been proper. So again, we have the same problem that you talked about, that when the UN asks them for money, they say that we don't have the money, whereas they do have the money. But the states who do have the power don't want to participate. So we could have solutions for that, but we haven't been able to. And the reason is that the states don't want to. So I think in order to be able to reduce the issues, we need better international laws, conventions that make the governments and encourages the governments to spend less money on military and a ceiling be set for all the states, meaning that the military budget should not exceed the education and also health budgets of the countries. Look at different countries. Look at the military budgets, for example, in the US and the educational budget. Or other countries, like my country, Iran. What the states claim is that we have sovereignty. It's our issue. So no one can tell us how to spend our money. So that's where the issue is. So if we believe that militarism is threatening human security, we need to have laws to make states use less money in military budgets and spend their money on education and on health. This hasn't happened yet because it's the governments who are represented there. And the governments don't want to lose their power and their sovereignty. They don't want to do anything for their people. Should that not be the case, the solution is easy. When we talk about political and civil rights, which have been written after the World War, and we do have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we can have conventions on stopping or limiting the development of militarism. And I have even written to the United Nations. I had even proposed. I knew that no one is going to pay attention to it, because implementing such conventions means limiting sovereignty and the power of each government. So there is a solution, but the UN does not have that power because the people who are members of the United Nations are the government representatives and not the people.
Thank you, Dr. Abadi. Kailash, what rules would you like to see to promote human security, and who do you think should make them?
While agreeing with my sister Shirin, I could add a few things. First of all, we should work for a more inclusive, more democratic, more participatory, and a strong United Nations. We don't want to see United Nations as a preacher, keep on preaching people, saying something you should do, you should not do. Who is listening? These countries who are responsible for threatening human security and escalating war situations, even the nuclear threat, they don't listen. So we have to have a strong United Nations. Though I myself is one of the UN Secretary General's appointed advocate on Sustainable Development Goals. But I could say that every day, every year, the growing economic disparities and gap between the countries and between the people is a serious threat which UN could not address. The Security Council is somehow controlled or influenced by one or two members, and that has to be restructured. That has to be more democratic and more inclusive. Financial institutions hardly have representation from Africa. There's no one single member of African nation in OECD, for example, and they make the financial decisions in the world, many of the financial decisions. So this is a serious threat. So one is the strong democratic UN system. The second one is the economic institutions democratization. I will give you one example. You were talking about SDGs. Everybody was very happy. I was also invited to address the General Assembly when the SDGs were adopted by the Assembly. And we are all happy because it has 4 elements: people, planet, prosperity, and peace together. And interwoven with the human rights. MDG did not have that rights approach, and now we have rights approach. And that is very, very important, significant. But during the first 4 years of SDGs, before pandemic, world has become $10 trillion richer during those 4 years. But the malnutrition, school dropout, per capita GDP in Africa has gone down, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. Even today, in some of the African countries, the total wealth is less than 1% of the wealth of United States per capita. South Korea and Switzerland. I would also like to tell you that there was a report which suggests that only $53 billion additional money can help in securing protection, education, and health for all children and all new mothers, pregnant women. $53 billion additional money. And this $53 billion is less than 10 days of global military expenditure. Less than 10 days of global military expenditure. This is less than 1.3% of social protection budgets of rich countries, G7 countries. So where is the priority? $12 trillion have been earmarked for what they call the global agenda of action, global agenda of action for COVID-19, to mitigate the effect of COVID-19. That was not for vaccines or health-related issues. That was to recover and help and hold handing of all the marginalized countries in the world. But out of that $12 trillion, almost $12 trillion, only 0.13%. I underline 0.13%, not even 0.5% has been dispersed or given to all low-income countries in the world. 0.13. This is discrimination. This has a manifestation of racial discrimination. This is inequality, and this inequality is violence, economic violence, that must not be tolerated. We have to speak out loudly that even we have such a great agenda of SDGs, we are failing it every day. We are failing our children, we are failing our women, we are failing our tribal, we are failing Africa as a whole, and particularly Sub-Saharan Africa, and that must be changed.
Thank you, Kailash. Ash, you represent the coming generation. What future world would you like to see? What would you like to see? How should the world be managed? Who should make the rules to ensure human security? What's your vision?
Thank you. I believe today and tomorrow, the rules should be made by what we have here. This is what is important. This is what people are. This is what hope is. And I want to say that in our work, we host a number of things, activities. One of them, our flagship event, is called a pop festival. And the reason it's a festival is because it's about celebrating, it's about hope, it's about daring to imagine, and it's about coming together and the strength in coming together. And what I want for us today really is those rules have to be made by people. The people who are affected most, whether it's a pandemic situation, whether it's an extreme climatic event, war, conflict, hunger, we don't have them amongst us right now. But we have to create spaces for them. And we have to found our work and everything we do on a framework where everybody can be included, where voices can be amplified, and where rights can be respected, where human dignity can be respected. And I also want to say that we were asked, in fact, just soon after February 24th, whether the pop movement's working in Ukraine. And if we are, how do you work with young people or communities in a war-torn area? And what I want to say is that unless we do this and work in those places, engaging those communities, we're not going to be able to go forward, because the issue of climate change is going to cause much more conflict than we're already facing today. And I also want to say that we're founded very much on education, and so I hope the rules are founded on education. But that education has to bring in love and compassion. There is no way for us to be able to move forward as a human race and as a society that is embracing of not just human health, but the health of the planet, the health of every species on which we are so dependent, unless we come from a place of love. And that's why I say the rule really needs to come from here, from our heart, where we are embracing of all. And all I want to say is that at the end of the day, that's what we're going to leave behind. That is going to be our legacy. Because we'll come and go. But what we leave behind will depend on what we do here together now. And I want to say that all the moments that have changed the course of history have been when people have got up because they've believed, because they've dared to dream, because they've had hope, and they've come together. And they've come together to amplify their voices, to tell their stories, and often it's been around music and dance, and we've had a chance to celebrate that here, but it's been because people have come together. And so I'm going to say that that wisdom and voice and those values of love are the rules.
Thank you. Thank you, Ash. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have analyzed the problems facing our planet. We have identified many of the solutions. What it comes down to in distilling what I've heard so far is that the world can't survive without rules. Rules that are accepted by the international community. We need rules that will help to promote the kind of democracy that Shirin Ebadi was talking about. Rules to promote human rights. We need rules to control the climate crisis. We've got to make sure that everybody buys into them. We need rules to promote sustainable development. Without such rules, we are facing further crises. Above all, we need rules to make sure that human security is supported by assurance that one country will not try to impose its will on another country by force. We need rules to limit nuclear weapons and ultimately to eliminate them. So the future will be determined by the degree to which we can return to a rules-based system. I would like to ask the panelists what their thoughts are on how we get from here, where things seem to be falling apart, to a world where these rules will be accepted by all nations. Thomas?
Thank you. We have a lot of rules already. So we have sort of a rule-based system. The issue is implementation of the rules. Now, the United Nations, and I'm not here to defend the United Nations, but they're the best we have. And Article 1 of the Charter says, we the peoples of the United Nations. It doesn't say we the governments, it says we the people. We have to make sure that the governments represent us, the people. And that's up to each country. And this is what we are fighting for. You know, democracy is a great concept, but there's no perfect democracy anywhere. So we have to fight for democracy every day, like President Gorbachev told us yesterday in this video. He gave us an example, fighting for democracy, because this is the system where each of us has access to opportunities. This is what it is. And most of our shortcomings today, all these inequalities which are no more sustainable, are for lack of access to opportunities. Our world is rich. We have a lot of money, but it's concentrated on 0.1%, 0.1%, not even 1%. This is not acceptable. We produce more food than we need to sustain the whole world. But 30% or 40% of all the food production never reaches the tables. At the same time, we have 800 million people who are exposed to food insecurity. So it's access to resources, access to the judiciary, access to the rule of law, access to opportunities, access to the markets, to medical service, clean water, pension funds, social safety nets. This is what we are fighting for. We have many rules. The question is how to implement these rules. Now, the United Nations is the great platform where the whole world expresses interests, and the United Nations is there to mediate among these interests and to draw, maybe, hopefully, progress. The question is how to implement this. I give an example. I fully agree with Nobel Laureate Shirin that we have to reduce military expenditure. But I remember more than 30 years ago, when I was in the first committee, Security Committee of the United Nations, we always talked about reduction of military expenditures to receive the so-called peace dividend, which needs to be invested to eradicate poverty. We never reached that. It has been a myth. We never got there. And we have not succeeded in reducing military expenditure, just the opposite. But so I'm a very practical person, and I'm looking where else can we look to raise the money to implement the Agenda 2030, Sustainable Development Agenda. And I looked very carefully, and I found out that the money siphoned out by illicit financial flows, including corruption, is much bigger than military expenditure. We're just not recognizing it. We don't even have numbers. We cannot measure corruption. But the estimate is that between 15 to 20% of global economy is siphoned out by bribery, corruption, tax evasion, tax avoidance. Much of it transferred to tax havens, where it doesn't benefit anybody. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. 15 years ago, we negotiated the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, which is a great document. It gives us for the first time the basis to fight corruption globally on the basis of the rule of law, excluding impunity, if implemented. But many instruments of the United Nations never get implemented, become dead wood. This is why we established this International Anti-Corruption Academy, to help facilitate implementation of the convention, that we all benefit from it. By providing technical assistance, capacity building to practitioners, we are training judges, prosecutors, lawyers, judicial personnel to understand how to implement this convention and how to provide us with a rules-based system that provides equity, access to opportunities. And I see a lot of progress here, to be very true. In the context, in the discussion now with the implementation of the SDGs, everybody is agreeing now that the biggest impediment to implement the SDGs, the biggest impediment to sustainable development are the illicit financial flows. Corruption is a structural impediment to sustainable development, and it can be tackled. We are tackling. Read the news, what's happening right now in Brussels, radio of the European Parliament. Many, many cases show that we are making progress. Slow. We cannot change the world from today to tomorrow. We know that. But we have to start somewhere. And each one of us has the opportunity and the responsibility to start somewhere. Because we have the responsibility. I have 5 children. And my responsibility is to struggle to make sure that my children will have the resources and the opportunities to take charge of their own life and to create their own opportunities to take their life into their own hands. And that's only possible if we struggle to close the gaps, to include, to provide inclusive, equitable, sustainable development that benefits everybody and leaves nobody behind.
Thank you, Thomas. Dr. Abadi, you expressed the wish that you would like to see democracy in Iran next year. You would like Iran to move toward a rules-based society in a rules-based world. How do you think we're going to promote democracy in countries that are tyrannical, also across the border, across the DMZ? How is the world going to promote democracy in a world where democracy is actually on the retreat, according to Freedom House?
How to bring democracy? I think that the response is easy. When people have power, and what I want to say is that they should have equal power, and no one should have the right to have a power more than others. Then we will have an advanced form of democracy. How? How can we how can we get to this? Because it's my desire, my wish. How am I going to get there? Whether my country, whether in America, whether in Australia, in South Africa, whatever we're talking about, it's not that easy. For example, look at Nelson Mandela. Him and declared finally brought democracy to their country. Him and de Klerk did it. But I've been to South Africa 3 times. And I still don't see people of color as equal. I see that they occupy the lower jobs of the society. Why is that so? Because they don't have the same power. On the paper, there is democracy. On the paper, there is democracy. But you tell me, the person who has to live on $1 per day, meaning that he only receives $1 per day, can he live the same life that a person with $10,000 per day has? Or do the kids go to the same school? Are they trained the same? No. So we're talking about the democracy on paper, but I'm talking about the real democracy. Real democracy happens when there is social justice, which means all people be equal. The gap between the rich and the poor should not be huge. That's when people can live together and they can work towards a better democracy for their country. In reality, if there is no social justice, we cannot talk about democracy. They're like a chain. They are linked together. Without one, the other one is not going to respond. But I want to add something in response to the question that was asked from me before. If we can make the governments to reduce their military budget, which should not be anything in excess of education or healthcare, you will see that better things can happen. This means that no country should have a military budget which is more than the budgets of education and health. So, if we can make the governments accept this, like human rights, have rules in this regard, we will have better human security. But my issue has always been that when you say we talk about United Nations, remember it's always the representatives of the governments that go there. People's representatives are not there. That's why the UN cannot work. I think that's where the issue. We first have to find a solution for that. خب کایلا شما خیلی مختصر ممکنه بگین چون وقتمون کمه.
Implementation or execution of any rule requires political will, adequate resources, technical capacity to follow those rules, and more importantly, genuine willingness, together with a framework of accountability. And these are all lacking in present institutions. I agree that they are among the best institutions one can think of, but they have to be re-energized or restructured in such a way that they can fulfill all these basic requirements. I will talk on two. One is, for SDG related thing, as a group of Nobel laureates, 40 plus Nobel laureates and 30 plus world leaders, former president, prime ministers, etc., we called together to the governments of every country to support an idea of a global social protection mechanism. We have seen that the social protection programs in many countries, including in India, like midday meal or employment guarantee scheme or Bolsa Escola, Bolsa Family, many examples in Africa and other places, that worked. So we are working and demanding that there should be a social protection mechanism where the countries have to invest in, those who are interested. I am also in contact with a number of presidents and presidencies and European Union as the anchor of this process. So this is something which is gaining some sort of support and got some positive responses. That is a concrete thing which we are working on, and I call upon every one of you. Secondly, this is not possible to establish democracy or justice, social justice, equality, peace, sustainability in the world without it comes from the bottom up. And I see young faces, bright faces of people here. Yesterday, I was talking with a number of youth, and I was so energized and so motivated that they have so much deep concern for the issues, and they're looking for some problems and solutions. So the energy and power and enthusiasm and morality of young people must lead the world. Youth must lead the world. That is the answer.
Thank you.
And finally, I would say one more sentence, that we have globalized economies. We have seen the result. Globalized production, globalized consumerism, globalized advertisement and everything. Knowledge, economy, data. And we have seen good results as well as the bad results. My dear friends, today is the time to globalize compassion. Let us globalize compassion. We have globalized everything, but we are excusing our compassionate connect. And we have to globalize compassion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Ash, now very, very briefly, your solutions to all of the problems of the world.
Well, I want to build on some of the important points that have been brought up and say that I, not surprisingly, am a big believer in the fact that youth need to lead action. And I want to say that we need to have many more women and girls at the forefront as well. And it's going to take founding our work on a human rights framework. And it isn't for a lack of conviction that we have people like the august presence we are amidst right now, because they believed with their hearts. And I just want to say that the economy of love, compassion is going to be key. Unless we see each other and feel for each other as a human family, we're not going to get there. And I just want to say that Dr. Badi, Kailash ji, Dave, Dr. Pachori, they came from a place because they believed. And that, I think, is what we need to hold on to and believe that we are the ones who are going to vote those governments in. Okay, we've got to believe in the power of goodness. We have to believe in the power of that being one family. Because, like I know in many cultures, we fold our hands when we meet each other. I know it became quite a fad during the COVID pandemic, but I want to say it has symbolism, which is that I pray from my heart to yours as a member of your family. So I hope that, we'll be able to get there and stronger together for sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We were supposed to have another video from Sean Connor, but I think we've run out of time. We've had a very interesting and lively discussion about the state of the world, the dangerous world we are now entering, and I think we've pretty well reached agreement that the solution lies in returning to a rules-based system, but a rules-based system enriched by compassion and caring. Thank you.
I also just wanted to say that we're hosting a peace lab on human security tomorrow. I hope we'll have the good fortune of welcoming all of you. But I wanted to say we'll have voices of people on the ground who are in fact in complete and total face-to-face circumstances with the challenges that we're talking about from the human security perspective. So look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, panel. Thank you, audience.
It was such an insightful and lively discussion that I could not take my eyes off the people, panelists, and the moderator. So now we will wrap up our panel discussion for the morning, and we will have a short lunch break until 1:30, and we'll be back for thematic forum. 2 thematic forums will be held at 1:30, so please be back by here until 1:30. Thank you.